Marcus Webb's dog wouldn't move. The Belgian Malinois stood frozen on the trail, ears flat, body rigid in a way that meant only one thing. Death was close. Through the Montana blizzard, Marcus saw them. 3 elderly women hanging from a hunting platform, ropes cutting into their wrists, boots dangling 6 feet above the snow. Their lips were blue. Their eyes were closed. The men who put them there had counted on winter to finish the job quietly, without witnesses. But they hadn't counted on a former Navy SEAL who'd spent 5 years running from responsibility, until the moment he couldn't run anymore. Before we begin, please subscribe to this channel and stay with us until the end of this story. Comment below with the city you're watching from. We want to know how far this message travels. Your support means everything. Marcus Webb had been awake for 36 hours when Shadow stopped moving. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix. The kind that lived in his bones, that made every breath feel like lifting weight. He'd been tracking elk signs through the Bitterroot Mountains, trying to clear his head the way he'd been trying for 3 years. But the thoughts followed him anyway. Afghanistan. The ambush. The 2 men he'd led into it. The silence after. He almost didn't notice when Shadow planted his paws and refused to go forward. "What is it, boy?" The dog didn't bark. Shadow never barked unless there was no other choice. His training ran deeper than instinct. 5 years as a military working dog, explosive detection, threat assessment. Marcus had adopted him after they'd both been medically retired. 2 broken soldiers trying to figure out what came after war. Shadow's growl started low in his chest, barely audible above the wind. His amber eyes fixed on something ahead, through the trees where the snow fell so thick it erased the horizon. Marcus's hand went to the sidearm at his hip without thought. Muscle memory. The kind that didn't ask permission. "Show me." Shadow moved forward slowly, head low, every step deliberate. Marcus followed, his boots crunching through ice that had been undisturbed for days. The storm had come in hard the night before, the kind that killed people who didn't respect it. Out here, 20 miles from the nearest town, there were no second chances. The hunting platform appeared through the white like a skeleton rising from the ground. Old timber, weathered gray, the kind hunters built decades ago and abandoned when the game moved on. Marcus had passed it 100 times, never stopped, never had reason to. Until now. 3 shapes hung from the crossbeam. Not game, not animals. People. Marcus's stomach dropped. His mind went cold and sharp the way it used to before an operation, stripping away everything except what needed to be done. He closed the distance fast, Shadow ranging ahead to check the perimeter, and when he got close enough to see clearly, the details hit him like fists. 3 women, elderly, their wrists bound with industrial zip ties, looped over the beam with climbing rope. They hung suspended, boots 6 inches above the snow, bodies slumped forward. Their winter coats were torn, their faces were pale, lips tinged blue. But they were breathing. Marcus didn't hesitate. He pulled his knife and moved to the smallest woman first, dark hair streaked with gray, her frame so thin the coat hung loose on her shoulders. Her head lolled to the side when he touched her, and her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. "Stay with me," Marcus said, his voice rough from disuse. "I've got you." He cut the rope, controlling her descent so she didn't drop hard. Shadow moved in immediately, pressing his warm body against her side, sharing heat. Marcus laid her flat, checked her pulse, weak but steady, and moved to the next woman. This one was taller, broader through the shoulders, blonde hair pulled into a braid that had come half undone. Her breathing was shallower, more labored. When Marcus cut her down, her eyes opened briefly, unfocused and glassy. "Don't," she whispered. Don't call them. Call who? Marcus asked, already moving to the third woman. Police. Sheriff. They'll finish it. The words landed wrong. Marcus's hands slowed for half a second, then resumed. The third woman was older than the others, her face lined with age and something harder. Resolve. Gray hair cut short, practical. She wore glasses, fogged and frozen, and when Marcus freed her, she gasped like someone surfacing from deep water. He's right, she managed, her voice stronger than it should have been. Don't call anyone. They're watching. Marcus scanned the tree line, his training taking over. Fresh tracks led away from the platform, already filling with snow. Boot prints, at least 2 sets. Recent, maybe an hour ago. Whoever had done this hadn't stayed to watch winter do the work, but they'd been thorough, professional. Who are you? Marcus asked, wrapping the oldest woman in his outer coat. Margaret, she said, her breath coming in short bursts. Margaret Chen. These are Rosa and Claire. They tried to kill us, Rosa interrupted, the smallest woman. Her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely speak. Because we wouldn't stop asking questions. Marcus's jaw tightened. He didn't ask what questions. Not yet. First rule of triage, stabilize, then investigate. My truck's 2 miles east, he said. Can you walk? Rosa can't, Claire said, the blonde woman. She'd pushed herself up on one elbow, her face tight with pain. She's diabetic. Her insulin's gone. They took everything. Marcus looked at Rosa more carefully. Her skin wasn't just pale from cold. It was waxy, gray. Her breathing was too fast. Hypoglycemia, probably severe. Without insulin or sugar, she'd go into shock. How long since your last dose? 20 hours, Rosa whispered. Maybe more. I can't remember. Marcus made the calculation instantly. 2 miles to his truck, another 30 to town, storm getting worse. Rosa wouldn't make it. None of them would, not in their condition. There's a cabin, he said, the words coming out before he'd fully decided. Half a mile north. It's mine. We go there first, stabilize you, then figure out next steps. They'll come back, Margaret said. Her eyes were sharp despite the cold, intelligent and unafraid. When the storm clears, they'll come back to make sure we're dead. Then they'll find me instead, Marcus said flatly. He lifted Rosa first, cradling her against his chest. She weighed almost nothing. Shadow took point, breaking trail through the deep snow. Claire and Margaret followed, moving slowly, supporting each other. Marcus didn't look back. Looking back wasted time. The wind howled through the trees, erasing their tracks almost as fast as they made them. Good. Let the bastards work for it. What's your name? Margaret asked, her breath laboring. Marcus Webb. You military? Was. SEALs? Marcus didn't answer. The cabin appeared ahead, dark and solid, exactly where he'd left it. He'd built it himself over 2 years, cutting timber, setting stone, making something permanent in a place where nothing else felt permanent. It wasn't much. 1 room, a loft, a stone hearth, but it was defensible. High ground, clear sightlines, 1 entrance he could control. He kicked the door open and carried Rosa inside, laying her near the cold hearth. Shadow circled the room once, checking corners, then positioned himself by the door. Marcus moved fast. He got the fire going, pulled medical supplies from the cabinet he kept stocked, and turned to Rosa. I've got glucose tablets, he said. Military rations. It's not insulin, but it'll keep you conscious. Rosa's eyes were closing. Marcus tilted her head back, placed 2 tablets under her tongue, and waited. 10 seconds. 20. Her eyelids fluttered. "Come on," Marcus said quietly. "Stay with me." Claire knelt beside him, her good arm reaching out. "Rosa, Rosa, look at me." Rosa's eyes opened, focused. "I'm here," she whispered. Marcus let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. He moved to Claire next, checking her shoulder where she'd been favoring it. Dislocated, probably. He'd seen enough of them to recognize the angle. "This is going to hurt," he said. "Do it," Claire answered. Marcus said it with one quick motion. Claire gasped, bit down on her lip, and nodded. "Thank you." Margaret was the strongest of the 3, already sitting up, already thinking. She watched Marcus work with the focus of someone taking notes. "You live alone out here?" she asked. "Yes." "How far to the nearest town?" 30 miles. "Phone?" "Satellite. But if what you said about the sheriff is true, calling him's suicide." Margaret smiled, thin and bitter. "You catch on quick." Marcus sat back on his heels, looking at the 3 women in turn. They were in their 60s and 70s, exhausted, hurt, but none of them looked beaten. Something about that steadied him. "All right," he said. "Tell me who tried to kill you and why." Margaret and Claire exchanged a look. Rosa closed her eyes, saving energy. "You know the old Copper Basin mining site?" Margaret began. "Shut down in the 90s, reclaimed by the Forest Service. Supposed to be protected tribal land now." Marcus nodded. "I know it." "It's not shut down," Margaret said. "It's operational. Someone's pulling rare earth minerals out of there, disguising it as environmental remediation work. We started noticing the signs 6 months ago. Heavy equipment moving at night, water contamination downstream, truck traffic on roads that don't officially exist." "We're environmental activists," Claire added, her voice stronger now. "Retired, but not stupid. We started documenting it, taking photos, water samples, GPS coordinates." "And?" Marcus prompted. "And we found something worse," Margaret said quietly. "The mining is real, but it's cover. They're moving something else through those tunnels. People. Children." The room went silent, except for the crackle of the fire. Marcus felt something shift inside him. The same thing that had shifted the day he'd decided to leave the service. The weight of knowledge that couldn't be unknown. "You have proof?" he asked. Margaret reached into her coat, pulled out a small waterproof case and opened it. Inside was a micro SD card. "Photos, audio recordings, truck manifests, names." She looked at Marcus directly. "Enough to bring down a senator, a sheriff, and a mining company worth $500 million. Marcus took the card, felt its weight, less than an ounce, heavy as a weapon. "Who else knows you have this?" "Just us," Claire said. "We didn't trust anyone. Every time we tried to report it through official channels, our information disappeared. Emails deleted, reports lost. We realized the system was compromised." "So you went alone," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. "We're 70 years old," Rosa whispered, eyes still closed. "Nobody takes us seriously. That's why we were perfect for the job." Margaret's expression hardened. 2 days ago, we went to document one final site. Private security caught us. Ex-military, professional. They didn't ask questions, just tied us up, drove us into the wilderness, and left us to freeze. Clean. No evidence. Just 3 old women who wandered off and got lost in a storm. Marcus stood, pacing to the window. Through the frosted glass, the storm raged. Visibility was 0. No one was coming tonight. But tomorrow, maybe. Or the day after. "The man who led them," Marcus said. "Describe him." "Tall," Claire said immediately. "Early 40s, muscular, military bearing. Short hair, no beard. Had a radio, kept calling someone Senator." Marcus's jaw clenched. "Victor Crane." All three women looked at him sharply. "You know him?" Margaret asked. "Knew of him," Marcus said. "He was military police before he went private. Worked black sites overseas. If he's involved, this isn't just corruption. It's organized, well-funded, protected." "So what do we do?" Rosa asked, opening her eyes now, fear finally showing through. Marcus looked at Shadow, who looked back with steady trust. Then he looked at the three women, survivors, fighters, people who'd refused to look away when everyone else did. "We survive the night," Marcus said. "Then we figure out who to trust." "Because you're right. The sheriff will kill you. But there's someone higher up the chain, federal, maybe tribal law enforcement, someone who isn't bought yet." "And if there isn't?" Claire asked. Marcus's expression didn't change. "Then we make sure this information gets out anyway, one way or another." The fire crackled. Outside, the storm screamed. Shadow's ears twitched, angling toward the door. Then his body went rigid again, the same stance he'd held on the trail. Marcus was moving before conscious thought, weapon drawn, positioning himself between the door and the women. "What is it?" Margaret whispered. Marcus held up one hand for silence, listened. Nothing. Just wind, just snow. Then, footsteps, soft, deliberate, circling the cabin. Shadow's lip curled back, exposing teeth, but he didn't make a sound. "They found us," Claire breathed. "No," Marcus said quietly, his voice cold and certain. "They followed us, which means they've been watching this whole time." Rosa's hand found Margaret's. Margaret's found Claire's. The footsteps stopped, right outside the door. Marcus's finger moved to the trigger, his breathing slowed. The world narrowed to this moment, this choice, this line he'd sworn he'd never cross again. But some lines, he realized, weren't made to be uncrossed. They were made to be held. The doorknob turned. The door swung open, and Marcus had half a second to decide whether to fire. Shadow lunged forward, teeth bared, and then stopped so abruptly his paws skidded on the wood floor. A boy stood in the doorway, maybe 16, maybe younger, indigenous, his dark hair plastered to his face with snow, his jacket torn at the shoulder. His hands were empty and raised, palms out, eyes wide with terror. "Don't shoot!" he gasped. "Please, don't shoot! They're coming!" Marcus lowered the weapon, but didn't holster it. "Who's coming?" "The security guys. 3 of them, maybe more. They were at the mining site asking about the women." The boy's chest heaved. "My uncle works there. He heard them say they left witnesses in the woods. I've been searching since yesterday." Margaret pushed herself up from the floor. "Tommy?" The boy's face crumpled with relief. "Mrs. Chen. Thank God. I thought I was too late." "You know him?" Marcus asked. "Tommy Blackfeather," Margaret said, moving toward the boy despite her exhaustion. "His family lives on the reservation boundary. He's been helping us document the site." Marcus's mind recalculated instantly. If the boy had been searching, his tracks would have led anyone following him straight here. "How far behind you are they?" Tommy's face went pale. "I don't know. I tried to cover my trail, but you're 16 and scared, and you ran straight here," Marcus finished. Not an accusation, a fact. Shadow, perimeter. The dog was out the door before Marcus finished speaking, disappearing into the white. Marcus grabbed his rifle from above the mantel, checked the magazine, and looked at Claire. Can you shoot? Yes. He tossed her a pistol. She caught it one-handed, checked the chamber with practiced efficiency. Former military, Marcus guessed, or law enforcement. She positioned herself at the window facing south. Margaret, take Tommy and Rosa to the loft. Stay low. Don't make noise. Margaret didn't argue. She helped Rosa stand, and Tommy supported her other side. They moved toward the ladder, slow but determined. Marcus went to the north window, the one facing the trail he'd used to approach. The storm was thinning slightly, visibility improving to maybe 30 yards. Not good. Easier for them to see, easier to be seen. How many men does Crane usually run with? He asked Claire, keeping his voice low. I saw 4 at the site where they took us, she answered, her eyes scanning her sector. But 1 stayed with the vehicles. So 3 on foot, maybe 4 if they called in backup. Marcus's jaw tightened. Professional operators don't hunt in storms unless they're certain of the target. Someone told them exactly where to look. Tommy, Claire said, and there was no blame in her voice, just understanding. They followed you. From the loft, Tommy's voice cracked. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to help. You did help, Margaret said firmly. You found us. That's what matters. Rosa's voice, weak but clear. Marcus, if they get in here, you give them the SD card and let them take us. You don't die for this. Marcus didn't turn around. Not how this works. You don't owe us anything. I pulled you down from that tree, Marcus said quietly. That means I'm responsible for keeping you alive. I don't quit on that responsibility. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning he didn't elaborate on. Claire glanced at him, reading what wasn't said. Afghanistan? She asked. Yeah. How many did you lose? 2. Marcus's finger rested along the trigger guard. Under my command. My call that got them killed. And you've been running from it ever since, Claire said. Not a question. Marcus didn't answer. Shadow's bark cut through the silence. 2 short sounds, the signal they'd developed for multiple hostiles. Contact, Marcus said. Claire, east window. Don't fire unless you have a clear target. Conserve ammunition. She moved smoothly, taking position. Her breathing stayed even. Good. Movement flickered through the trees. Marcus tracked it through the scope, waiting for confirmation. 3 shapes, moving in tactical formation, 50 yards out and closing. They wore white winter camouflage, carried rifles, moved like men who'd done this 100 times. 3 confirmed, Marcus reported. Crane's not with them. These are contractors. How can you tell? Claire asked. Crane would have hit us already. He doesn't wait. These guys are being cautious, which means they're not sure what they're walking into. The lead man stopped, raised a fist. The team froze. Marcus watched through the scope as the man scanned the cabin, probably seeing smoke from the chimney, trying to determine how many people were inside. The man's radio crackled. Marcus couldn't hear the words, but he saw the response. A nod, a hand signal, the team spreading into a wider formation. They're flanking, Marcus said. 2 going east, 1 holding center. Claire, you're about to have company. I see them. Marcus made a decision. He couldn't let them get into position. Once they had crossfire established, the cabin became a coffin. I'm going out, he said. That's suicide, Claire shot back. No, staying here is suicide. Out there, I have mobility, and they lose their advantage. Marcus moved toward the door, then stopped. If I don't come back, there's a survival cache buried 20 yards north of here, marked with 3 stacked rocks. Weapons, food, emergency beacon. Use it. Marcus, if I'm not back in 10 minutes, you run. Don't wait for me. He was out the door before she could argue, Shadow materializing beside him from the shadows. The cold hit like a wall, but Marcus barely felt it. His mind was operating on a different frequency now, the one developed over years of combat, where thought and action collapsed into instinct. He moved fast and low, circling east to intercept the flanking team before they got into position. Shadow ranged ahead, silent as a ghost, reading the terrain in ways humans couldn't. The first contractor never saw them coming. Shadow hit him from the side, 70 pounds of trained violence taking the man down into the snow. Marcus was on him a second later, weapon pressed to the back of his head. Don't move. Don't speak. The man froze. Smart. Marcus zip-tied his hands behind his back, gagged him with his own scarf, and dragged him behind a fallen log. One down. The second contractor heard the commotion and turned, bringing his rifle up, but Shadow was already moving. The dog didn't attack. He created chaos, barking and circling, forcing the man to spin, to lose his orientation. Marcus closed the distance and struck hard and precise. The contractor dropped. 2 down, 1 still in the trees. Marcus pressed himself against a pine trunk, breathing controlled, listening. Shadow crouched beside him, ears forward, tracking something Marcus couldn't see. A voice called out from the tree line. "Webb! Marcus Webb! I know who you are!" Marcus didn't respond. Talking gave away position. "SEAL Team 7, Afghanistan, Operation Red Wing 2. You lost 2 men in Helmand Province. Their names were Dalton and Rodriguez. They died because you hesitated." Marcus's jaw clenched. Shadow whined softly, sensing the tension. "Victor Crane sends his regards," the voice continued. "He said you'd run. Said you'd let these women die rather than fight. Said you were broken." "Tell Crane he's welcome to come say that himself," Marcus called back, already moving to a new position. "He's busy. Senator Vance wants this cleaned up quickly. She's got a confirmation hearing next month. Can't have loose ends." "Senator Patricia Vance," Marcus said, filing the name away. "The one running for Interior Secretary. Smart man. So you understand why this has to end tonight. Give us the women and the data card, and we'll make it quick. You can walk away. Live out whatever's left of your life in peace." Marcus chambered around loudly enough to be heard. "I've got a counteroffer. You walk away right now, and I don't put you in the ground next to your friends." Silence. Then, "You took down 2 trained operators. Impressive. But you're still outnumbered. We've got a team coming in from the north. 6 more men, fully equipped. You can't win this." Margaret's voice echoed in Marcus's memory. "They're watching. They'll come back to make sure we're dead." "Shadow, cabin," Marcus whispered. The dog hesitated, then obeyed, slipping back through the trees. Marcus waited until Shadow was clear, then made his move. Not toward the third contractor, but away from the cabin, creating a trail obvious enough to follow. The contractor took the bait. Marcus heard him moving, trying to flank. Good. Let him think he had the advantage. Marcus circled back, came up behind him, and struck. The man went down hard. Marcus secured him, took his radio and weapons, and keyed the mic. "This is Marcus Webb. Tell your team to abort. Tell them 3 of your men are alive but secured. Tell them if they come for the cabin, they're going to war with someone who's very good at it." Static. Then a different voice, older, controlled. "Mr. Webb, I'm impressed. But you're making a mistake. This isn't a battle you can win. Maybe not, Marcus said, but I can make it expensive. How many men are you willing to lose? How much noise are you willing to make? Because a firefight out here will bring Forest Service, state police, maybe even federal attention. Is that what Senator Vance wants? More silence. Marcus could almost hear the calculation happening on the other end. We can offer you money, the voice said finally. More than you'd make in 10 years. Walk away. Take the boy. Leave the women. They're old. They'll be dead in a few years anyway. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. The answer's no. Then you're signing your death warrant. Wouldn't be the first time. He clicked off the radio, smashed it under his boot, and moved back toward the cabin. Shadow was waiting at the door, and Marcus slipped inside to find Claire still at the window, Margaret and Rosa in the loft, Tommy sitting with his back against the wall, looking shell-shocked. They're regrouping, Marcus said. We've got maybe an hour before they come with reinforcements. So what do we do? Margaret asked from above. Marcus looked at the SD card on the table, then at the three women who'd refused to look away from evil when everyone else had. Women in their 70s, exhausted and hurt, still fighting. We make sure this information gets out, Marcus said, no matter what happens to us. Rosa's voice came weak but determined. How? Marcus pulled out his satellite phone, the one he used for emergencies. I know someone who might still be clean, but calling him puts a target on him too. Who? Claire asked. Federal agent. Used to work tribal crimes before they transferred him. He tried to investigate the mining site 2 years ago, got shut down from above. He'll know what to do with this data. And if he's compromised? Margaret asked. Then we're back to Plan B. Which is? Marcus met her eyes. We fight until we can't, and we make damn sure the truth survives even if we don't. Tommy stood up suddenly. I can get the data out. I can run it to my uncle on the reservation. He's got contacts with tribal police. They're not part of the county system. They can't be bought by Vance. They'll hunt you, Marcus said. I'm already dead if they catch me. At least this way it means something. Margaret climbed down from the loft slowly, painfully. She picked up the SD card and held it in her palm like a fragile thing. This is everything, she said. 6 months of work. Names, dates, locations. Evidence of trafficking routes. Photos of the children they took. Her voice cracked. We found records. 12 missing kids from 3 reservations. All disappeared near the mining site. The room went silent. Even Shadow seemed to sense the weight of it. 12, Claire repeated, and her voice shook. Children. Rosa was crying quietly in the loft. We tried to save them. We tried to tell people. No one listened. Marcus took the card from Margaret. They'll listen now. He copied the data onto 3 separate drives, redundancy, the way he'd been taught. One for Tommy to run to the reservation, one for his federal contact, one he'd hide at the cache site, insurance against total loss. When Tommy leaves, they'll see him, Claire said. They'll follow. I know, Marcus said, which is why I'm going with him. Shadow and I will break trail, draw their attention. You 3 stay here, fortified. They won't risk a direct assault on the cabin if they think I'm running with the data. That's suicide, Margaret said flatly. No, that's tactics. They want the data more than they want bodies. They'll follow the greater threat. And when they catch you? Rosa asked. Marcus checked his rifle, his sidearm, his knife. They won't. Claire stood, moved close enough that only he could hear. You're doing this because of Afghanistan. Because you think dying for us will balance the scales. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. Marcus, you don't have to die to prove you're not broken. He looked at her then. Really looked. Saw someone who understood loss, who'd carried her own weight. I'm not trying to die. I'm trying to make sure you three live. There's a difference. Tommy gathered what little gear he had. Marcus loaded him down with supplies, water, food, hand warmers, a flare gun. You run straight north, Marcus instructed. Don't stop. Don't look back. When you hit the logging road, you'll see a ranger station. It's abandoned, but there's a radio inside that still works. Call your uncle. Tell him what you have. What about you? I'll be fine. Tommy didn't believe him. No one in the room believed him. But no one argued, because they all knew there wasn't another choice. Margaret pressed something into Marcus's hand. A compass, old brass, engraved with initials he couldn't make out in the firelight. My husband's, she said. He was a Marine. Korea. He always said a good compass brings you home. Marcus nodded, unable to speak around the sudden tightness in his throat. Shadow stood by the door, ready, waiting. Always waiting for Marcus to choose the path forward. One thing, Rosa called down from the loft. When this is over, when they catch the people responsible, don't let them say we were victims. We weren't. We were fighters. We chose this. I won't, Marcus promised. He opened the door to the storm. Tommy stepped out first, young and afraid and brave. Shadow followed, then Marcus, and the night swallowed them whole. Behind them, in the cabin, 3 women who'd refused to die quietly waited in the dark, weapons ready, hearts steady. The hunt had begun, and this time, the hunters had become the hunted. The cold hit Tommy first, stealing his breath before his lungs could adjust. Marcus grabbed his shoulder and pulled him forward, away from the cabin's fading light, into darkness that swallowed sound and direction. Shadow ranged ahead, invisible except for the soft crunch of his paws breaking through ice crust. Keep moving, Marcus said. Don't think, just move. Tommy stumbled, caught himself. I can't see. You don't need to see. You need to trust. Marcus kept one hand on the boy's jacket, guiding him north by memory and instinct. Behind them, voices carried on the wind, orders being shouted, engines starting. The hunters had found their trail. Shadow stopped suddenly, his body going rigid. Marcus froze, pulling Tommy down into a crouch. 3 seconds passed. 5. Then Shadow moved again, veering east. What was that? Tommy whispered. Ambush point. Shadow smelled them before we walked into it. Marcus's jaw tightened. They're not just following us. They're trying to cut us off. How many? Too many. Marcus pulled the copied data drive from his pocket and pressed it into Tommy's hand. New plan. You run straight east, fast as you can. Don't stop for anything. There's a creek bed half a mile from here. Follow it north until you hit the logging road. What about you? I'm going to make sure they follow me instead of you. Marcus gripped Tommy's shoulder hard. Listen to me. Those 12 missing children, they're still alive. We found shipping schedules. They're being moved in 3 days. If you don't get that data to your uncle, those kids disappear forever. You understand? Tommy's whole body was shaking, but he nodded. I understand. Good. Now run. Tommy ran. Marcus watched him disappear into the black, then turned south, back toward the voices. Shadow pressed against his leg, questioning. I know, boy. I know. Marcus checked his rifle one more time. But we're not leaving them behind. Not again. He fired 3 shots into the air, spaced deliberately. A signal. A challenge. Come and get me. The response was immediate. Shouts, movement, flashlight beams cutting through the storm. Marcus ran parallel to their advance, drawing them away from Tommy's trail, deeper into terrain he knew and they didn't. The forest became a weapon. He used it. A contractor appeared through the trees, rifle raised. Shadow hit him low and hard, and Marcus followed through, disarming him in 2 quick movements. The man went down and stayed down. "How many in your team?" Marcus demanded, knee pressed into the man's chest. "Go to hell!" Marcus pressed harder. "Wrong answer. How many?" "8," the man gasped. "Plus Crane. He's coming from the mining site with reinforcements." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "When?" 20 minutes, maybe less." He zip-tied the contractor and moved on, but the math was already working against him. 8 operators in the forest, more coming, and 3 elderly women alone in a cabin with limited ammunition. He'd made a tactical error. He'd divided his strength, and now everyone was vulnerable. His satellite phone buzzed. Marcus pulled it out, saw Claire's number. "Talk to me." "They're surrounding the cabin." Claire's voice was steady but urgent. 4 men moving into position. Margaret thinks they're waiting for something. "They're waiting for Crane," Marcus said. "He wants to handle it personally." "Marcus, Rose is getting worse. Her blood sugar's dropping again. She needs real medical help." "I know. I'm coming back." "You can't. You're 2 miles away with 8 men between us." "Claire." "We knew this was one way when we started," she said quietly. "We're not your responsibility. We chose this." "You don't get to choose to die." "Neither do you." A pause. "Margaret wants to talk to you." The phone crackled, then Margaret's voice came through, sharp and clear. "Marcus, listen carefully. When I was documenting the mining site, I found old survey maps. There's a tunnel system under this mountain. Abandoned mine shafts from the 1950s. One entrance is 300 yards northwest of your cabin." Marcus's mind raced. "You're saying there's a way out?" "I'm saying there's a way for us, not you. The tunnel exits near the logging road, 2 miles north. If Rosa can walk that far, we can make it." "And leave you to face Crane alone?" Claire added, back on the line. "I've faced worse," Marcus said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "No, you haven't." Claire's voice softened. "But you're going to anyway, because that's who you are. So here's what we're going to do. We're taking Rosa through the tunnels. You're going to create enough chaos that Crane focuses on you instead of tracking us, and Tommy's going to get that data to people who can stop this." "Claire." "We're not asking permission, Marcus. We're telling you the plan. Margaret's already packing Rosa up. We move in 5 minutes." The line went dead. Shadow whined softly, sensing Marcus's conflict. He wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, wanted to carry all of them out on his back if that's what it took. But Claire was right. The mission wasn't survival anymore. It was making sure the truth survived. "Okay, boy," Marcus said quietly. "Let's give them a show." He moved fast through the trees, making noise now instead of hiding it. Gunfire erupted behind him. They'd found where he'd been. Good. He fired back, not to hit, but to reveal position, to draw them forward. Shadow worked the flanks, appearing and disappearing like a ghost, forcing the contractors to spread wider, to lose cohesion. A voice shouted, "He's alone! Just him and the dog!" Another voice, older, harder. "Then kill him and get to the cabin." Marcus recognized that voice. Victor Crane. He'd arrived. "Shadow, defensive." The dog fell back, positioning himself between Marcus and the advancing team. Marcus keyed his satellite phone, calling the federal agent whose number he'd memorized years ago and never used. 3 rings. 4. Then, "This is Agent Chen?" "David, it's Marcus Webb." Silence. Then, "Webb? I thought you were dead." "Not yet, but I'm about to be unless you listen very carefully." Marcus moved as he talked, relocating every 30 seconds. "Senator Patricia Vance is running a trafficking operation through the Copper Basin mining site. Rare earth minerals as cover, moving children through abandoned tunnels. I have evidence, photos, manifests, recordings. 12 missing kids from 3 reservations." "Marcus, slow down. I don't have time to slow down. Vance's security team is trying to kill me and 3 witnesses right now. I need federal response, and I need it in the next 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Marcus, I can't. David, I pulled you out of that ambush in Kandahar. You said you owed me. I'm collecting." Another pause.
"Where are you?" Marcus gave him coordinates, quick and precise. "The women are heading through old mine tunnels toward the logging road. There's a boy named Tommy Blackfeather running data to the reservation. He's 16, alone, scared. If something happens to me, he's your only witness. Nothing's going to happen to you." "Yeah, it is." Marcus said it simply, without drama. "But it's okay. Just make sure it matters." "Marcus." Gunfire cut off the conversation. Marcus dropped the phone and returned fire. 3 controlled bursts. 1 contractor went down. The others took cover. Shadow barked once, the warning sound. More movement coming from the east. Marcus's ammunition was running low. His options were narrowing. Then his phone buzzed with a text from David Chen. "FBI en route. Tribal police notified. ETA 25 minutes. Hold position." 25 minutes. Marcus had maybe 5 before they overran him. He pulled back toward higher ground, a rocky outcrop he'd scouted years ago when he'd first built the cabin. Defensible position, clear sightlines, only one approach. If he was going to make a stand, this was the place. Shadow reached it first, checking the rocks for threats before Marcus climbed up. From here, he could see the cabin in the distance, dark and silent. No movement. Good. The women had made it out. "Just you and me now, boy," Marcus said, scratching Shadow's ears. The dog leaned into his hand, trusting completely. Flashlights appeared below, spreading in a tactical formation. Marcus counted them. 5, 6, 7. One more somewhere in the dark. They knew where he was now. They were done chasing. "Marcus Webb!" Crane's voice echoed off the rocks. "You've got nowhere left to run." "I'm not running," Marcus called back. "No, you're just delaying the inevitable. The women are gone, the boy's gone. You're alone. This doesn't have to end badly for you." "Give me the data and walk away." "Data's already gone. Federal agents got it. FBI's on the way. You've got about 20 minutes before this whole thing collapses." Crane laughed. "You think Agent Chen's going to help you? David Chen's been on Senator Vance's payroll for 2 years. Who do you think's been burying the reports, deleting the evidence?" Marcus felt the words hit like physical blows. David. The man he'd saved in Afghanistan. The man he'd trusted with everything. "You're lying." "Am I? Check your phone, Marcus. See if Agent Chen's still responding." Marcus looked. No signal, no service. Chen had cut him off. Shadow growled low in his throat, reading Marcus's tension. The world tilted sideways, and Marcus felt something crack inside him. Not breaking, but opening. He'd been betrayed by the system again. But this time, he wasn't alone. This time, he had something worth fighting for. "Doesn't matter," Marcus shouted back.
Tommy's data went to the tribal police.
They're not on Vance's payroll. The boy's dead, Crane said flatly. We caught him at the creek crossing, put a bullet in him before he could transmit anything. Marcus's vision went white. You're lying. His name was Tommy Blackfeather, 16 years old, wearing a torn blue jacket. Had 3 data drives in his pocket. All destroyed. No. Number. Marcus had sent him away. Sent him alone. Sent him to die. Shadow's bark brought him back, sharp, urgent, warning. Movement on the left flank. Marcus swung his rifle and fired, but his hands were shaking, his focus fractured. The shot went wide. Return fire sparked off the rocks. Marcus ducked, but not fast enough. Pain exploded in his left shoulder, spinning him around. He hit the ground hard, ears ringing. Shadow was there instantly, positioning his body between Marcus and the shooters, snarling with a ferocity Marcus had never heard from him. Blood soaked through Marcus's jacket. His left arm wouldn't respond properly. "Marcus!" A woman's voice, distant but clear. "Claire." He turned his head, vision blurring. 3 figures emerged from the forest behind Crane's position. The women. They hadn't run. They'd circled back. And they were armed with the contractor's weapons Marcus had captured earlier. Claire fired first, a single precise shot that dropped the man on Crane's left. Margaret followed, her aim shaky but determined, forcing 2 more contractors to dive for cover. Rosa, barely able to stand, held a flashlight, shining it directly into the eyes of anyone who tried to advance. "You don't touch him!" Claire screamed. "You don't touch any of them!" Crane spun, caught off guard, and in that moment of distraction, Shadow launched himself down the rocks, 70 pounds of pure protective fury. He hit Crane's center mass, driving him backward into the snow. Marcus forced himself up, right arm still functional, weapon raised. "Everybody freeze!" The contractors hesitated, caught between targets. Their training said to neutralize threats systematically, but their instinct said this had gone wrong. 3 elderly women, a wounded seal, and a dog that fought like it had nothing left to lose. "Drop your weapons," Marcus ordered, his voice rough with pain. "Federal authorities are en route. You've got 1 chance to walk away from murder charges." "They won't arrest us," one contractor said, but his voice lacked conviction. Senator Vance just lost," a new voice interrupted. Tommy Blackfeather stepped out of the trees, alive, whole, holding up his phone with the screen glowing. "I transmitted everything, 10 minutes ago, to tribal police, FBI, every news outlet I could find. It's uploading right now. Live stream. Thousands of people watching." Marcus almost laughed, almost cried. "You're supposed to be dead. I doubled back when I heard the shooting. Figured you might need backup." Tommy's voice shook, but he stood firm. "And I figured they'd lie about killing me to break you." Crane tried to push Shadow off, but the dog had him pinned, teeth at his throat, not biting, but promising. Crane's eyes found Marcus, and something like respect flickered there. "You should have taken the money," Crane said. "I tried running from responsibility once," Marcus answered. "It didn't work. So now I run toward it." Sirens echoed through the forest, real ones this time, growing louder. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees. Tribal police arrived first, 3 vehicles, then county sheriff units that screeched to a stop, and finally federal SUVs with FBI markings. But the first person to reach Marcus wasn't law enforcement. It was Margaret, moving slowly, painfully, until she stood in front of him. "You're bleeding," she said. "I'll live." "Yes," Margaret said simply. "You will." Claire helped lower Marcus into a sitting position, while Rosa sank down beside him, exhausted
but smiling.
Shadow finally released Crane and trotted back to Marcus, licking his face once before sitting at attention, on guard even now.
An FBI agent Marcus didn't recognize approached, showing credentials. "Marcus Webb, I'm Agent Sarah Martinez. We have Senator Vance in custody in Washington. David Chen's being arrested as we speak. Tribal police are coordinating rescue operations for the children." "How many?" Marcus asked. "How many children?" "All 12, Martinez said quietly. "Thanks to your evidence, we found them. They're alive." Rosa started crying. Margaret closed her eyes and whispered something that might have been a prayer. Claire gripped Marcus's good hand and didn't let go. Tommy collapsed onto the snow, the adrenaline finally leaving him, and he sobbed like the teenager he was, brave and terrified, and impossibly young. "You did good, kid," Marcus said. "I didn't do anything. You ran toward danger when everyone told you to hide.
You trusted your instincts when the system failed. You saved 12 kids you've never met." Marcus's vision was getting fuzzy, shock setting in. "That's everything." Medics arrived, trying to separate them, but the women refused to leave Marcus's side until he was stabilized. Shadow stayed too, pressed against Marcus's leg, ignoring all attempts to move him. "Sir, we need to get you to a hospital," a paramedic insisted. "In a minute." Marcus looked at Margaret, Claire, and Rosa in turn. "You three. You didn't quit. The world told you that you were too old, too powerless, too much trouble. And you fought anyway." "We didn't fight alone," Margaret said. "We had you." "No," Marcus said, and his voice cracked. "I had you. You reminded me what courage looks like." The last thing Marcus saw before the exhaustion pulled him under was Shadow's amber eyes, steady and sure, and the three women who'd refused to freeze quietly, standing over him like guardians. The truth was out. The children were safe. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Webb could breathe without the weight of Helmand Province crushing his chest. He'd run toward danger instead of away. And somehow, impossibly, he'd made it through to the other side. Marcus woke to white walls and the steady beep of machines. His shoulder was on fire, wrapped tight enough that he couldn't move his left arm without pain shooting through his chest. Shadow's weight pressed against his right leg. The dog stretched across the hospital bed, despite regulations that said he shouldn't be there. "You're supposed to be in recovery," a nurse said from the doorway, but she was smiling. You're exactly where you should be." "How long?" Marcus's throat felt like sandpaper. 36 hours. They had to remove the bullet and repair some muscle damage. You're lucky it missed the artery by half an inch." She checked his vitals, professional but gentle. "You've got visitors." 3 women who refuse to leave. A teenage boy who's been sleeping in the waiting room, and about 24 federal agents who want statements. "The women first," Marcus said. Margaret, Claire, and Rosa entered together, moving slowly but under their own power. Rosa was on an IV drip, but her color had returned. Claire's arm was in a proper sling now. Margaret looked tired but sharp, her eyes taking in every detail of Marcus's condition. "You look terrible," Margaret said. "You look alive," Marcus countered. "Thanks to you." Claire sat in the chair beside his bed. "The doctor said if you'd lost much more blood." "But I didn't." Marcus looked at each of them. "You came back. You were supposed to run." "We're 70 years old," Rosa said, her voice stronger now. "We don't run anymore. We stand." "That could have gotten you killed." "So could hanging from a tree in a blizzard," Margaret pointed out.
But here we are, still breathing, still fighting. You taught us that.
I didn't teach you anything. You taught us that one person can make a difference, Claire said quietly. That standing up matters even when the system is rigged. That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act anyway. A doctor entered, interrupting the moment. Mr. Webb, I need to discuss your recovery timeline. You'll need physical therapy, possibly surgery if the shoulder doesn't heal properly. You're looking at 6 months minimum before full function returns. I'll heal faster, Marcus said. Everyone says that. No one does. The doctor made notes on his chart. You also need to talk to the psychiatrist before discharge. Standard protocol for trauma cases. After the doctor left, Tommy appeared in the doorway, looking smaller somehow, younger. His eyes were red from crying, or lack of sleep, or both. They want me to testify, Tommy said. Federal grand jury. They're building cases against 15 people. Security contractors, mining company executives, county officials. Are you going to? Marcus asked. I don't know. I'm scared. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I mess up and they get away with it? You won't mess up, Margaret said firmly. You're going to tell the truth. That's all anyone can ask. But what if the truth isn't enough? Tommy's voice broke. What if they have lawyers who twist everything? What if Senator Vance walks free? She won't, Agent Martinez said, entering with 2 other FBI agents. Senator Vance tried to flee to a country without extradition. We caught her at a private airfield. She's in federal custody, no bail. The evidence you gathered is airtight. What about Agent Chen? Marcus asked, the betrayal still raw. Martinez's expression darkened. David Chen cooperated fully once he realized we had him. He's providing testimony against everyone involved in exchange for a reduced sentence. Turning out, he was being blackmailed. Senator Vance had evidence of financial impropriety from years ago. She used it to control him. That doesn't excuse what he did, Marcus said. No, it doesn't. But it explains it. Sometimes good people make terrible choices when they're trapped. Martinez pulled up a chair. The children have been recovered, all 12. Medical exams show they were being held for trafficking, but none had been moved yet. You stopped it just in time. Rosa covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Claire put an arm around her shoulders. Can they go home? Margaret asked. To their families? Martinez hesitated. That's complicated. 3 of the children have families that are involved. Parents who sold them into the operation in exchange for drug debts being forgiven. Child Services is working through it, but it's messy. Nothing about this is clean, Marcus said. It never is. No, Martinez agreed. But it's justice. Imperfect, incomplete, but real. She pulled out a tablet, showed Marcus photos. These are the faces of the children you saved. I thought you should see them. Marcus looked at each photo. Children ranging from 6 to 14. Indigenous kids with dark hair and dark eyes. Some smiling in the pictures, some not. 12 lives that had been commodities, now given a chance to be children again. What happens to them now? He asked. Foster care mostly, tribal families where possible, counseling, education. A future. Martinez put the tablet away. It's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than what was waiting for them. Over the next 3 days, the story broke nationally. News crews descended on the small Montana town, broadcasting from outside the hospital, interviewing anyone who'd speak to them. The narrative became simplified, heroic. SEAL saves elderly activists and rescues missing children. Marcus hated every minute of it. They're making me sound like I planned this, he told Margaret when she visited on the 4th day. Like I was some kind of hero. You were, Margaret said simply.
I was a guy who stumbled onto something he couldn't ignore. The heroes are you three. You spent 6 months investigating when everyone told you to stop. You documented everything. You refused to quit. And you refused to let us die. Margaret sat down heavily. Marcus, I need to tell you something. The Congressional Committee wants me to testify about corporate exploitation of tribal lands. They're using our case as the centerpiece for new legislation. That's good. It's terrifying. I'm 70 years old. I've never spoken in front of Congress. What if I freeze? What if I can't make them understand what we found? Marcus met her eyes. You hung from a tree in a blizzard for 6 hours and didn't quit. You can handle a room full of politicians. Margaret laughed, but it was shaky.
When did you get so good at pep talks?
I had good teachers. Marcus nodded toward where Claire was helping Rosa navigate the hallway with her IV pole. You three showed me what real courage looks like. Now go show them. But the victory felt hollow when Agent Martinez returned with news that made Marcus's stomach drop. We've hit a snag. The mining company filed for bankruptcy protection. They're shielding their assets behind corporate structures. The CEO might see jail time, but the company itself will probably dissolve and reform under a new name. So they get away with it, Claire said, her voice flat. Not all of them. We're prosecuting individuals, but the corporate accountability? Limited. The system has loopholes big enough to drive a truck through. That's not justice, Rosa said. No, Martinez agreed. It's the law. Sometimes those are two different things. Marcus felt the old anger rising, the same fury that had driven him out of the military. The system protected the powerful. The vulnerable got sacrificed. Nothing ever really changed. Marcus! Tommy's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. The boy stood in the doorway holding a phone. You need to see this. On the screen, footage played. 12 children being reunited with family members who weren't compromised. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings. The children cried. The families cried. One little girl, maybe 8 years old, ran into her grandmother's arms and refused to let go. That's what we did, Tommy said. That's what matters. Marcus watched the footage loop 3 times before he could speak. You're right. That's what matters. But later that night, alone in his hospital room with only Shadow for company, Marcus made a phone call he'd been avoiding for 3 years. The phone rang 6 times before someone answered. Rodriguez residence? Mrs. Rodriguez? This is Marcus Webb. I served with your son, Miguel. Silence. Then, I know who you are, Mr. Webb. Miguel spoke of you often. I need to tell you something. About the day he died. About the call I made that got him killed. I know what happened. The Army told me. The Army gave you the official report. I want to give you the truth. Marcus's throat tightened. I hesitated. We were in a compound, clearing rooms. Miguel and Dalton were on point. I saw movement, and I hesitated because I wasn't sure if it was hostile. That hesitation gave the enemy time to detonate an IED. They died because I wasn't fast enough. Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Then, Mr. Webb, my son loved being a SEAL. He chose that life knowing the risks. You didn't kill him. War killed him. And you've been punishing yourself for 3 years for something that wasn't your fault. I was his commanding officer. He was my responsibility. And I'm his mother. I carried him for 9 months, raised him for 24 years. If I can forgive the circumstances of his death, you can too. Her voice gentled. Miguel wouldn't want you living like this. He'd want you to keep fighting for people who need it. From what I've seen on the news, that's exactly what you're doing. Marcus couldn't speak. Shadow pressed closer, sensing his distress. "There's a memorial service next month," Mrs. Rodriguez continued, "for Miguel and James Dalton. Both families will be there. I think you should come. Not to apologize, but to heal." "I don't deserve to heal." "None of us deserve anything, Mr. Webb. But grace isn't about deserving. It's about accepting that we're human, we fail, and we keep going anyway." She paused. "Come to the memorial. Let us help you carry this weight. You've carried it alone long enough." After she hung up, Marcus sat in the dark for an hour, Shadow's steady breathing the only sound. He thought about Miguel and James. He thought about Margaret, Claire, and Rosa, who'd survived because he chose to act instead of run. He thought about 12 children who had futures now. Maybe Mrs. Rodriguez was right. Maybe healing wasn't about deserving. Maybe it was about choosing to keep fighting, even when the system was broken, even when justice was incomplete, even when the weight felt unbearable. Claire visited the next morning with news. "I'm starting a photography project, documenting the families of missing Indigenous children across 5 states. Tommy's helping me organize it. We're going to make sure their stories don't disappear." "That's dangerous work," Marcus said. "So is everything worth doing?" Claire smiled. "You taught me that." Rosa came in next, moving without the IV now, color fully restored. "My daughter called. First time in 3 years. She saw me on the news, saw what we did. She wants to meet. Says she's been organizing Indigenous rights protests in Seattle. Wants me to come speak to her group." "Are you going to?" Marcus asked. "I'm 71 years old, and I just survived being left for dead in a blizzard. You're damn right I'm going." Rosa's eyes sparkled. "I've got things to say, and people need to hear them." Margaret was the last to visit before Marcus's discharge. She sat quietly for a moment, then, "They arrested Sheriff Brewster this morning. He broke during interrogation. Gave up names of everyone involved. County commissioners, state legislators, business owners. This thing goes deeper than we thought." "How much deeper?" 6 states. 17 missing children beyond the 12 we found. Connections to trafficking rings in 3 countries. Margaret's voice was steady but grim. "We exposed one operation, but it's a network. Cutting off one head just means others adapt." "So what do we do?" "We keep fighting. We document everything. We speak truth even when it's dangerous. We refuse to let evil work in silence." Margaret looked at him directly. "And we accept that victory is rarely complete. Sometimes justice means saving who you can, and never forgetting those you couldn't." Marcus thought about that for a long time after she left. Incomplete justice. Imperfect victory. The system's still broken in 1,000 ways, but 12 children alive who wouldn't have been. 3 women empowered instead of silenced. A teenager who learned that courage meant acting despite fear. Agent Martinez came for a final debriefing. "Victor Crane's talking. He's giving us names of other operations Vance was running. This is going to get bigger before it gets smaller." "What about the children we haven't found yet? The 17 Margaret mentioned." "Active investigations in multiple states. Your evidence gave us leverage to get warrants, to freeze assets, to flip witnesses. It's happening, Marcus. Slowly, but it's happening." "And when it's done? When the trials are over and the news moves on? Then we do it again. Because this kind of evil doesn't quit, it adapts. So we adapt too. We keep fighting." Martinez stood to leave, then turned back. "I heard you're going to a memorial service for your team members." "How did you?" "I'm FBI. I know things." She smiled slightly. That's good, Marcus. Facing your past. It's the only way to build a future. After she left, Marcus lay in the dark, Shadow's weight solid and real against his leg. He thought about futures and pasts, about 12 children given second chances, about 3 women who'd refused to be victims, about a teenage boy who'd been braver than most adults. The system was still broken. Corporate criminals would mostly escape with their fortunes intact. More children were still missing. Justice was incomplete and imperfect and maddeningly slow. But 12 children were breathing who wouldn't have been. And that meant something. That meant everything. Shadow stirred, looked at Marcus with those steady amber eyes, and seemed to understand what Marcus was only beginning to accept. That redemption wasn't about erasing mistakes, but about choosing to fight anyway. About standing up even when the odds were impossible. About refusing to let evil win through silence. Marcus scratched Shadow's ears and made a decision. He was going to the memorial service. He was going to face Miguel's and James's families. He was going to stop running from responsibility and start running toward it. Because 3 elderly women had shown him what real courage looked like. And if they could fight at 70, he could fight at 38. The darkness was lifting, not completely, not perfectly, but enough to see the path forward. 6 weeks later, Marcus stood outside Arlington National Cemetery with Shadow at his side, and his left arm still in a sling. The physical therapy was working, but slowly, the way healing always did when the wounds went deeper than muscle and bone. Mrs. Rodriguez had sent him the invitation 3 times before he finally accepted, and even now, standing at the entrance, he wanted to run. "You don't have to do this," Margaret said beside him. She'd flown out from Montana specifically for this, refusing to let him face it alone. Claire and Rosa had wanted to come too, but Rosa was testifying before a Senate subcommittee, and Claire was in South Dakota photographing families who'd lost children to trafficking. "Yes, I do," Marcus said. "Then let's go." They walked through the gates together, Shadow's presence solid and grounding. The memorial service was being held at a pavilion overlooking rows of white headstones that stretched like waves across green hills. 50 people had gathered, family members, former teammates, military brass with chests full of ribbons that Marcus no longer cared about. Mrs. Rodriguez saw him first. She was smaller than he'd imagined from her voice, maybe 5 feet tall, her dark hair streaked with gray, wearing a simple black dress. When their eyes met, she didn't look angry or bitter. She looked tired. "Mr. Webb," she said, walking toward him. "Thank you for coming." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, the words catching in his throat. "I'm so sorry about Miguel. If I'd been faster, if I'd made a different call." "Stop." Mrs. Rodriguez's voice was gentle but firm. She reached up and placed her hand on his chest, right over his heart. "Miguel died doing what he loved, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, just like you're doing now. Don't diminish his sacrifice by making it about your guilt." James Dalton's father approached next, a tall man with white hair and Miguel's same blue eyes. Marcus had expected hatred. Instead, the man extended his hand. "James wrote about you in his letters," Mr. Dalton said. "Said you were the best commanding officer he'd ever served under. Said you cared more about bringing everyone home than you did about medals or promotions." "I failed," Marcus said simply. "No, you survived. There's a difference." Mr. Dalton's grip tightened. "My son's death nearly destroyed me. I spent 2 years drunk, angry, blaming everyone. Then I saw you on the news, saving those women, rescuing those children. And I realized something. James would have done exactly what you did. He would have run toward danger instead of away from it. That's the legacy you carry, not failure. Choice. The service began before Marcus could respond. A chaplain spoke about sacrifice and duty. A general read citations Marcus barely heard. Then Mrs. Rodriguez stood to speak, and the crowd went silent. "My son Miguel was 24 years old when he died," she began, her voice steady despite tears streaming down her face. "He was funny and brave, and sometimes very stupid, the way young men are."
He believed in protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. He died believing that. She paused, looking directly at Marcus. "I've heard people say that his death was a waste, that the war was meaningless. But I refuse to believe that. Miguel's death meant something, because the man who led him, the man who survived, didn't let that death be the end of his service. Marcus Webb honored my son by continuing to fight for people who needed it. That's not failure. That's redemption." Marcus felt something break inside him. Not shattering, but opening, like ice cracking in spring. Margaret's hand found his, squeezing gently. After the service, Tommy appeared with his uncle, a quiet man named Joseph Blackfeather, who wore traditional jewelry and carried himself with the dignity of someone who'd seen too much injustice and refused to be broken by it. "Mr. Webb," Joseph said, shaking Marcus's hand. "My nephew tells me you saved his life." "He saved mine first," Marcus answered. "He was braver than most men twice his age." Tommy's face flushed. "I was terrified the whole time." "That's what bravery is," Mr. Dalton said, joining the conversation. "Being terrified and acting anyway. My son taught me that." "So did 3 elderly women," Marcus added quietly. "They were left to die and they refused. They fought back with cameras and notebooks and courage that put mine to shame." Agent Martinez arrived then, looking official in her FBI credentials, but tired in her eyes. "I have news. The corporate trials start next month. We've got 17 executives facing charges. It's not everyone involved, but it's enough to send a message." "What about the children?" Margaret asked. "The 17 still missing?" "We found 4 more last week, Illinois and Wisconsin. They're safe now, being reunited with family. But 13 are still unaccounted for." Martinez's expression hardened. "We're not giving up. Every agency is coordinating. Tribal police, FBI, state investigators. We're following every lead." "It's not enough," Tommy said, and his voice cracked with frustration. 13 children still out there. How is that acceptable? "It's not," Marcus said, "but it's reality. We save who we can, and we never stop looking for the rest. That's the work." "The work shouldn't have to exist," Tommy shot back. "This shouldn't be happening. Not in America, not to my people." Joseph put a hand on his nephew's shoulder. "You're right. It shouldn't be. But it is. So we fight. We document. We refuse to be silent. We honor the missing by refusing to forget them." A woman Marcus didn't recognize approached hesitantly. She was indigenous, maybe 40, with long dark hair and eyes that carried old pain. "Mr. Webb, I'm Sarah Whitehorse. My daughter Emily was one of the 12 you found." Marcus's throat went tight. "How is she?" "Alive, scared, angry, seeing counselors 3 times a week." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "But alive. Because of you and those 3 women and Tommy. My daughter gets to be 8 years old. She gets to have a childhood. That's everything." "I'm glad," Marcus managed.
They told me Emily was taken because I couldn't pay a debt, a medical bill from when my husband died. $20,000. They said if I gave them Emily for one job, they'd forgive the debt. Sarah's voice broke. I told them no. I went to the police. The police did nothing. So I went to the tribal council. They investigated, but the people involved had connections. By the time anyone took me seriously, Emily was gone. 3 months. 3 months she was missing. Where is she now? Margaret asked gently. With my mother on the reservation. Safe. Learning to trust again. Sarah looked at each of them in turn. I came here to say thank you, and to ask what I can do.
How do I fight back? How do I make sure this doesn't happen to another family? You speak, Claire said, appearing with Rosa, both of them having finished their respective testimonies and caught a red-eye to make the service. You tell your story to anyone who listen. You make people uncomfortable with the truth. Rosa stepped forward, leaning heavily on a cane, but standing straight. Sarah, I'm Rosa Martinez. I'm 71 years old, and I spent 6 months investigating the people who took your daughter. They tried to kill me for it. They left me hanging in a blizzard to freeze. And I'm still here, still fighting. Because silence is what they want. Our voices are what they fear. I'm not brave like you, Sarah said. Neither was I, Rosa answered. Not until I had to be. Courage isn't something you have. It's something you choose, moment by moment, when the alternative is letting evil win. The group moved away from the memorial, finding space to breathe and talk. Shadow stayed close to Marcus, but he kept looking at the children who'd come with their families, watching them play near the pavilion with the intensity of a guardian who understood his job had expanded. He's changed, Margaret observed, watching the dog. He used to only protect you. Now he's protecting everyone. He learned it from you three, Marcus said. You showed him what's worth protecting. A television news crew approached, cameras rolling, and Marcus tensed. But it was Claire who stepped forward, Rosa and Margaret flanking her. We'll handle this, Claire said. You've done enough press. Marcus watched as the 3 women faced the cameras with the same courage they'd shown hanging from a tree in a blizzard. Claire spoke about the missing Indigenous children crisis. Margaret discussed corporate exploitation of tribal lands. Rosa talked about elder activism and the power of refusing to be silent. These women, the reporter said, they're calling you the Whistleblowers 3. How do you respond to people who say you should have left the investigation to authorities? We tried that, Margaret said flatly. The authorities were compromised. We did what we had to do because no one else would. And you nearly died for it. Yes, Claire said, but 12 children lived because we didn't quit. I'll take that trade every time. The interview went viral within hours. By the next morning, 3 more families had come forward with stories of missing children near industrial sites. By the end of the week, a national task force had been formed, specifically to investigate trafficking connections to corporate operations on Indigenous lands. Marcus received a call from the VA hospital where he'd been doing physical therapy. Mr. Webb, we have a request. There's a veteran here, former Marine, struggling with PTSD. He saw you on the news, asked if you'd be willing to talk to him. Marcus almost said no. He wasn't a counselor, wasn't qualified to help anyone work through trauma. But then he remembered Mrs. Rodriguez's words. Don't diminish his sacrifice by making it about your guilt. I'll be there this afternoon, Marcus said. The veteran's name was David Torres. He was 26, missing his right leg below the knee, his hands shaking so badly he couldn't hold a coffee cup steady. His eyes had the same haunted look Marcus saw in the mirror every morning.
They said you were a SEAL, David started. That you got 2 men killed and couldn't handle it. That you ran away to Montana to hide. That's accurate, Marcus said. So, how do you live with it? How do you wake up every day knowing your call got people killed? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Shadow leaned against David's chair, offering silent comfort. I don't know if I do live with it. I carry it, every day, every hour. But I stopped letting it be the only thing I carry.
What does that mean? It means I still see Miguel Rodriguez's face every time I close my eyes. I still hear James Dalton's last words. But I also see 3 women who refused to die quietly. I see 12 children who get to grow up. I see a teenage boy who is braver than most adults. I carry all of it now, the failures and the victories, the guilt and the purpose. That doesn't make the guilt go away, David said, and his voice cracked. No, it doesn't. But it gives you a reason to keep going despite it. You want to honor the people you lost? Fight for people who still need fighting for. That's what Miguel and James would have wanted. That's what your brothers would want. David was crying now, silent tears tracking down his face. Shadow pressed closer, and David's shaking hands found the dog's fur, gripping it like a lifeline. I don't know how to start, David whispered. You start by getting out of bed tomorrow. Then you start by talking to one person who needs to hear that they're not alone. Then you start by refusing to let the darkness win. One day at a time, one choice at a time. Marcus visited David 3 more times that month. By the 4th visit, David's hands weren't shaking as badly. By the 8th visit, David was volunteering at a youth center, teaching kids from rough neighborhoods about resilience. You did this, David told Marcus. You showed me how. No, Marcus said. You did this. I just reminded you that you could. 3 months after the memorial service, Marcus stood on the steps of the Capitol building with Margaret, Claire, Rosa, and Tommy. Inside, Margaret was scheduled to testify before the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. Protesters lined the streets. Indigenous rights activists, environmental groups, families of missing children holding photos of faces that haunted Marcus's dreams. I can't do this, Margaret said suddenly, her confidence cracking. I'm 70 years old. I'm a retired geology professor. What do I know about policy and legislation? You know what you saw, Marcus said. You know what they tried to do to you. You know the names of 12 children who'd be dead if you'd quit. That's all you need to know. Rosa squeezed Margaret's hand. We're with you, all of us. You're not alone in there. Margaret straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked through those doors like she was walking into battle. Which, Marcus supposed, she was. Inside the hearing room, senators sat behind a long desk, some looking genuinely interested, others checking phones and looking bored. Margaret approached the microphone, adjusted her glasses, and began to speak. My name is Margaret Chen. I'm 70 years old. 6 months ago, I discovered that a U.S. senator was using corporate mining operations as cover for human trafficking on indigenous lands. When I tried to report it through official channels, my evidence disappeared. When I tried again, I was ignored. When I refused to stop, I was left to die. The room went completely silent. I'm here today because a former Navy SEAL and his dog refused to let 3 old women freeze to death. I'm here because a 16-year-old boy was braver than most adults. I'm here because 12 children deserve to grow up. But I'm also here to tell you that 13 children are still missing. Hundreds more across this country are at risk, and the system that's supposed to protect them is compromised by money, power,
and the assumption that indigenous lives matter less than corporate profits. One senator interrupted. "Ms. Chen, these are serious allegations. They're facts," Margaret said, her voice cutting like steel. "I have documentation, photos, audio recordings, testimonies from children who survived. Senator Patricia Vance ran this operation for profit. She used her position to shield it. And she's not the only one. There are others still in power, still operating, still trafficking children while you debate budgets and committee assignments." "What do you expect us to do?" another senator asked. "I expect you to act," Margaret said. "I expect you to prioritize children over campaign donations. I expect you to investigate every corporate operation on tribal lands. I expect you to believe indigenous families when they report missing children, instead of assuming they're runaways or parental kidnappings. I expect you to do your jobs." The testimony lasted 4 hours. Margaret didn't falter once. When she finally emerged, exhausted but unbroken, the protesters erupted in cheers. "I think you did okay," Claire said, hugging her tightly. "I think we all did okay," Margaret answered, looking at Marcus. "We're still standing. That's victory enough." But the real victory came 2 weeks later, when the Senate passed bipartisan legislation creating a federal task force specifically to investigate trafficking on tribal lands, with funding for victim services, family support, and prosecution of corporate entities involved in exploitation. "It's not perfect," Agent Martinez told them during a video call. "Corporate structures still have loopholes, but it's progress, real, measurable progress, and it happened because you four refused to be silent." "5," Rosa corrected. "Shadow's part of this team too." The dog's ears perked up at his name. He'd been officially certified as a therapy dog and was now working with Marcus at the VA hospital, helping veterans like David Torres find their way back to purpose. On a cold morning in March, nearly 6 months after Marcus had found 3 women hanging from a tree, he stood in the Montana wilderness with Shadow, looking at the same hunting platform where everything had changed. The ropes were gone now, cut down and burned, but the memory remained. "We did good, boy," Marcus said quietly. "Nigel and James would be proud." Shadow barked once, sharp and clear, and Marcus felt something settle in his chest. Not peace, exactly, not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. The knowledge that running toward danger instead of away from it had saved lives, had made a difference, had proven that one person could matter. His phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. "Found another family willing to talk about their missing daughter. Illinois. Can you come?" Marcus looked at Shadow. Shadow looked back with steady amber eyes that said what he always said. "I'm with you, wherever you go, whatever you face." "Yeah," Marcus texted back. "I'll be there." He turned away from the platform and walked toward his truck, Shadow ranging ahead, alert and ready. Behind them, the wilderness stretched silent and vast. But it wasn't empty anymore. It was full of voices that refused to be silenced, of children given second chances, of elderly women who'd shown a broken seal what courage really meant. Marcus Webb had come to Montana to hide from responsibility. He'd stayed to embrace it. The system was still broken. Justice was still imperfect. Evil still existed in quiet, insidious ways. But 3 women in their 70s had proven that age didn't diminish courage. 12 children had proven that some battles were worth fighting, no matter the cost. And 1 former SEAL had proven that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about refusing to let the past define your future. As Marcus drove away from the mountain, Shadow asleep in the passenger seat, he thought about Mrs. Rodriguez's words at the memorial. "Don't diminish his sacrifice by making it about your guilt." He wasn't running anymore. He was fighting. For the 13 children still missing. For the families still searching.
For every vulnerable person the system failed to protect. Because God didn't always send miracles wrapped in light and thunder. Sometimes He sent a stubborn man with a loyal dog who refused to look away when evil demanded silence. Sometimes He sent 3 elderly women who wouldn't quit despite impossible odds. Sometimes He sent a teenage boy brave enough to run toward danger instead of away from it. Faith wasn't passive. It was the choice to act when action was costly, to speak when silence was safer, to stand when falling was easier. It was moving toward the vulnerable instead of away from them, no matter what it cost. Marcus Webb had learned that lesson the hard way. But he'd learned it, and now he was teaching it to others. One veteran, one family, one rescued child at a time. The hunt wasn't over. It would never be over. But neither was the fight. And as long as Marcus could stand, as long as Shadow could run, as long as voices like Margaret's and Claire's and Rosa's refused to be silenced, evil would not work unopposed. That wasn't victory. That was duty. That was purpose. That was the only thing worth living for. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Webb was finally, truly alive.